First, start out, what does that mean? What is crop diversity?
So crop diversity is this aspect of growing multiple different types of crops for multiple reasons. Food crops are beneficial obviously because they provide food and nourishment to the farmer. This is this process of cultivating a plant that provides good energetics to the consumer, and so as a farmer you want to be creating good energetics for yourself and building these feedback loops that, we put good energy into the food, we eat the food, we put good energy into the cannabis, and the whole thing is this uplifting cycle. So crop diversity is important for farm health, for farm bottom line. Traditionally the small farm was a producer of many different types of crops, and that way if one crop doesn't work out, you have a crop failure, the prices aren't good for one crop, you've got a lot of different things happening.
So crop diversity is effectively just growing other crops besides the cannabis along with the cannabis.
Bingo.
And what are some of the benefits of doing something like that?
So you're going to confuse pests and pathogens. You spread the plants out, you grow different things in between them. If you have, for instance, one big field of corn, if corn borer worms get in there, then you're going to have a real problem because that's all they have to eat, and they're going to just run the whole field. And so if you have a whole lot of different things, then you're going to confuse the pests and pathogens, and you're also going to have more space for beneficials. So for instance, right here you see we have alfalfa growing in the cut banks of our terraces. Alfalfa provides habitat for bees and all sorts of little creatures and beneficial insects. It also is a big nitrogen fixer, and so what you can do is halfway through the season we'll cut the alfalfa and the roots will die back because roots are commensurate to the growth. The roots will die back and you'll get a nitrogen bloom, a flush that comes into the soil that the plants are able to uptake. So
wow,
and
so
then,
it's actually so this crop is actually feeding the plants.
Bingo. And then you can use the alfalfa for animal feed, you can use it to make teas. It has a growth hormone in it itself, and so you can dry it and use it next year for your soil blend. It's got a wealth of possible uses. And so
That's
for us,
amazing.
crop diversity is about maximizing productivity, trying to they call it stacking of enterprises, in which, if you're growing cannabis, you're in the cycle. You have a loop going, and it becomes much easier to add more loops in. And so, for instance, with the cannabis terraces, we'll do the soil prep early in the spring, and we'll plant everything to cooking greens, cabbages, cauliflowers, salad mixes, all sorts of things that grow quickly, come out early, and then we'll create space. And so we'll plant the cannabis in, we'll be harvesting the greens out. As the cannabis gets bigger, we harvest back each, away from the plants, and we're able to, essentially haul in several crops a year because we're maximizing our space, and that again goes with spacing the plants out wide enough that there is space in between them to do things, and then they are, avoiding pests and pathogens because we're having more light and air movement.
That is just fantastic. So the alfalfa here actually was feeding the plants. You've mentioned pests. Are there any companion crops that would help keep pests away?
It's definitely, any flowering plants are really, really good for bringing in beneficial insects, which will combat pests and pathogens. There's a fair amount of discussion about, different beneficials, different herbs, different, things that also release terpenes. Cannabis releases terpenes too. That's part of its defense mechanism.
Absolutely.
And so, growing different herbs and different strong smelling terpene having plants can help to either attract insects that would otherwise go to the cannabis or ward off insects. And so this is, it's real anecdotal informative still. So for us, a lot of the time, it's based more on food crops, but there has been quite a bit of discussion lately within the community about what types of herbs and things should be grown alongside cannabis.
So that said, is there anything that we should avoid growing alongside cannabis?
Definitely. So we don't grow any cucurbits, cucumbers, squash, melons, anything in the cucurbit family, because they get powder mildew real bad. And so we keep those totally clear. We put those on a different part of the farm than the cannabis. Same thing, beans tend to get spider mites real bad, and so we use beans as, obviously we grow them for food, but we also use them as a trap crop. And so we'll put beans near the edge of the cannabis, and so that way they'll tend to attract spider mites, and so we don't end up with them in the cannabis.
All right. And I imagine regionality probably comes into play as well.
Absolutely. For instance, if you're on the coast, you're probably not going to grow tomatoes with your cannabis. And so depending upon where you're located at, how warm it is, and that's going to affect the types of strains you grow. You know, if you've got a shorter season, you're going to want to be looking at smaller indicas. If you've got a long season with lots of sun that goes late, you're going to be looking at these, you know, bigger, more sprawly sativas. Same thing, you know, like I said, we do cooking greens and cool weather crops in the spring and the late fall. In the summertime, we'll do some peppers and eggplants, but only in places where we have really wide spacing, because peppers and eggplants are really heavy feeders. And so I try to avoid, like, I don't want to plant a heavy feeder that's going to encounter the roots of the cannabis plant, because then they're going to be in competition. And so if you have really wide spacing, peppers, eggplants, okra, those can all be really good things. Again, if you have a hot place,
Competition, competing for the same nutrients, you're saying.
Yeah, and you definitely want to avoid that as much as possible. And so those I will give a really wide spacing to. Whereas, for instance, salad mixes and stuff, we'll plant real close, because their roots are really shallow. They don't take up that much nutrients, and so they're not really so much in competition.
So for someone just starting out, you know, and they want to, you know, introduce, you know, some companion crops into their garden, are there certain crops that may be, you know, better, you know, for beginners?
Definitely. Cooler weather, salad mixes, bok choy, tatsoi, kale, collards, things like that. Again, keep them away from the plants. Salad mixes can go fairly close, but any of those other leafier greens, keep them away from the plants. Basil is really good during the summer. Flowers are great. Flowers, they attract bees, they attract all kinds of beneficial insects, so you're doing good work for the pollinator base. You're providing support to the environmental community, while also, you know, it makes it beautiful, it makes it pleasing to the eye. Basil is phenomenal because it's just super tasty. You can put in all kinds of summer stuff. We do fennel is really good. That's kind of a nice fun one that's fairly quick and easy, makes a nice bulb. You get some fronds for salads and stuff. Cilantro is really good also. You know, any of these kind of like quick cooking herbs and greens, stuff that grows quick, can, you know, if you start to see that it's getting, you know, the plant's getting big and it's getting too close, you can yank it without, you know, for instance, if you got a tomato plant, you're not really gonna want to yank it, because you got a bunch of time invested in it and you've been waiting for it to start producing. But, like, you know, if you got some greens or something and you're kind of like, all right, you're out of here, we'll plant some more and they'll grow again real quick.
Okay, so it sounds like companion cropping can help feed your plants. It could help bring in beneficial insects to keep pests away, and provide you with food and herbs at the same time.
Yep.
All right. Sounds like a lot of great reasons to consider companion cropping then.
I highly recommend it. It's
Fantastic.
a lot, and it's a lot of fun. It's like, it sort of adds to that enjoyment of being a farmer.
It's fantastic. Thank you so much, Casey.
My pleasure.